we're here in Liverpool for the Labour Party conference, and Sir Keir Starmer has used his speech here to try and strike a more optimistic note about the future. The Prime Minister announced to the Hall in Liverpool a new Hillsborough law designed to stop institutional cover-ups and also give victims of injustice greater power to take on the state. Well, I'm pleased to say we're now joined by the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, for a bit more analysis of the speech. What did you make of it?
Well, I think the Prime Minister came into Labour conference having spent the summer talking about the need to fix the foundations in our country and being honest with people about the dire situation we inherited. I think he came into this conference wanting to describe the house he wants to build on those foundations, and I think he did that with a speech that was actually visionary and full of hope and optimism and a plan. And I think you also saw from Keir like the steel, the grit, the determination. We're used to coming to Labour conferences and seeing that steel from Keir Starmer because he gripped this party from the abyss of one of its worst defeats and changed the Labour Party. And I think we can see today now a Labour Prime Minister who has the grit and steel to change the country.
I guess my question is, how optimistic was it really? You know, you kind of looking at some of the language, you're saying it won't be easy, I'm going to have to make unpopular decisions, it's going to be hard. I mean, it sounds, if this is Keir Starmer's version of optimistic, then what's his version of pessimistic?
No, do you know what? I think people will take real comfort in the honesty. Like we've had for years in this country now, government by gimmick, short-term sticking plasters, self-service, not public service, and people want a Prime Minister who's going to level with them, who's going to explain like how we get from the Britain we have today to the Britain we want to build in the future.
His approval ratings don't seem to suggest that, though. They've been going down ever since, haven't they? Maybe people do want a bit more hope and optimism.
Well, I think they got that from the speech today, and ultimately we're going to be judged by our actions, not by our words. We stood on a manifesto for change at the general election. We're going to deliver that manifesto. Keir set out the ambition today for a decade of national renewal, and we know that we'll only be able to deliver that decade if we win not just a first-term Labour government, but a second-term Labour government. And therefore, you know, we're going into the next general election having not yet earned a single vote. And we believe very strongly through experience that votes aren't owned, they're earned. And what Keir is doing is, with the same steel and grit and determination he showed as leader of the Labour Party, he's now showing the same again as leader of our country to deliver the change that people are crying out for.
Can I ask a question that might seem quite stupid? What does national renewal actually mean? Because I feel like it's one of these phrases that gets thrown around all the time. What is national renewal?
Well, it means a country where fundamentally, whoever you are, wherever you're from, you have the same opportunity and security in life as people from the wealthiest backgrounds. So if you look at our 5 big missions for the government, it's sort of getting growth back into the economy, and not just more growth, but fairer growth, where everyone gets a fair share of the national wealth, to build a health and social care system fit for the future, of smashing through the class ceiling to give kids from working class backgrounds like mine the same opportunities in life as those from the wealthiest background, to take back control of our streets so
it means everything
feel safe, and our energy security. No, these are 5 big challenges, 5 big missions, but you've got the leader there, the team, and the plan to deliver that vision.
He spoke a lot about service. He said service, I think, 18 times in the speech. If he's positioning himself as the guy who's cleaning up politics, do you think that, I guess, is why the donations and freebies story has shown some cut-through? Because he's basically saying, I'm the guy who's here for the right reasons, unlike all the other guys. But in that case, you have to judge him to a higher standard.
Well, I think it's about transparency and accountability. So on political donations, of course, especially when you're in government, you have to make sure that you're behaving in an ethical way. But what I don't think we say enough in this country is that people who give to political parties to fund our politics are showing the same philanthropic spirit as people who give to charity. I think it is actually a noble pursuit. I think it is a good thing to do. The alternative is taxpayer funding of political parties, and I think taxpayers want their taxes spent on public services, not spent on politics.
Some people would completely disagree with that, though, right? They might say, look, if you're giving to a homeless charity or something, then that is for all the right reasons. And a lot of people, they would say, actually give to political parties for influence.
Except that, in my experience, both in terms of people who've donated to me to fund my campaigns, or staff in my office in opposition, or the Labour Party donors that I've met over the years, all they've ever wanted is to see Labour values put into action through power and through winning government. They've never asked for anything in return. These are people who support the Labour Party because they share our values. And what the Conservatives tried to do at the last election was increase the spending limit because they thought they would raise the money and we wouldn't. And instead, we put a huge effort into building support from a really great team of people who donated their money in the case of financial donors, but their time as Labour members to do something which is noble in our country, which is politics and democracy. And I know it hasn't felt like politics has been a noble profession in this country for some time. I was elected in 2015. I feel like I've lived through some of the worst chapters in British political history, but I still believe with the same optimism that I felt 20 years ago when I first came to to Labour Party conference, that politics is a force for good. And politics is a force for change. And I think we will show that through our actions during this Parliament, not simply our words.
I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you about the health service as well, because it's such a huge thing for conference and the country. And of course, I know you've got your speech tomorrow. You are not going to be able to give too much away about it. One of the big achievements was striking a deal with striking workers, right, when you first became Health Secretary. And yet, yesterday, we saw the Royal College of Nursing rejecting the government's 5.5% pay offer right in the middle of Rachel Reeves' speech. Have you been a bit played by the unions, giving them these big pay rises, and then they might just end up striking anyway?
It was important to me to settle the junior doctors, now resident doctors, strikes, because we'd seen billions of pounds wasted on the costs of the strike, more than 1.5 million cancelled operation appointments and procedures. And it was in the interest of patients to get those staff back to work, and the interests of the future of the profession, that people who are at an early stage of their medical career should feel optimistic and hopeful about the future. So I'm proud of the fact that within 3 weeks I did something the previous government couldn't do in 18 months.
You know, the Royal College of Nursing, I spoke to them yesterday, they said, yeah, striking is always in our toolkit.
It's always in any trade union's toolkit, but I don't think nurses in this country fundamentally want to be out on strike. I think they wanted to send a new government a message about their experience with the previous government. And I'm looking forward to working with the Royal College of Nursing, other nursing unions, and with nurses to make sure that they are working in an NHS that they can be proud of in all times, in all places. And at the moment, despite the brilliant dedication of nurses in our country, one of the things that they are really angry about, beyond their own pay and conditions, are the conditions that they are working in. And the sense of moral injury they feel when they bust their guts for their patients and feel their best isn't good enough because the NHS is in such a state and they feel powerless to do anything about it. I see them as part of my team, actually. I'm not going to be able to change the NHS on my own. I've got to mobilise a team of people right across the country, and I'm in their corner, and they're in mine too.
One more thing to ask you. Banning smoking outside pubs. It was kind of floated, it was discussed, went a bit quiet. What's going on? Is it going to happen?
We'll be publishing the tobacco and vapes bill shortly. We've got to take action on smoking. It's still the biggest killer in our country, and I'm concerned not just about the harmful effects of smoking directly, but the harmful effects of second-hand smoke as well. And look, I'm up for it.
Come on, give us a clue. What's happening?
I'm looking forward to the debate on this.
You floated, went quiet. Come on, it's had a...
Well, I think there was a leak to a newspaper, and we don't comment on leaks.
Oh,
but
right,
look, you can expect from me bold action on public health and prevention, because it's public health reform as well as health service reform that's going to get our NHS not just back on its feet, but making sure it's fit for the future. And if we don't do that, we won't have a national health service. And I'm not going to be the person who lets that happen. I'm going to be the person who takes the NHS in the worst crisis in its history, gets it back on its feet and fit for the future, and not on my own, but with millions of health and care workers right across the country who share this government's vision and ambition.
Okay.